When you think about getting better at something, really mastering a skill or a sport, our instinct is almost always to go straight to what I call the loud places.
The loud places. That is, well, it's an interesting way to frame it. What do you mean by that exactly?
Well, I mean, think about golf, which happens to be the focus of our deep drive today. When someone wants to shave strokes off their game, what do they normally do?
Right, they go buy a brand new, incredibly expensive driver that promises like 20 more yards.
Exactly. Or they hire a coach to completely deconstruct and rebuild their swing mechanics. They spend hours on the putting green, grinding through these endless, frustrating reps.
Yeah, it's all action. It's all very noisy.
Right. It's entirely about adding more technique to an already, incredibly complicated process.
It's the very visible, highly marketable aspect of improvement. I mean, it is so much easier to sell a new club than it is to sell a new mindset.
Totally. But the source text we're diving into today presents this really fascinating paradox. It argues that the fastest, most dramatic scoring gains.
We're talking about, realistically, shaving 5 to 6 strokes off your scorecard here.
Right, 5 to 6 strokes. And those gains, they don't actually come from more technique. They don't come from those loud places at all.
No, they come from introducing less chaos.
Which is just, it's brilliant.
It's a complete paradigm shift for most players.
Yeah.
The author is moving away from this pervasive idea that you need to spend months fixing your swing to hit brilliant shots.
Right.
And instead, they focus heavily on building a repeatable system that simply, eliminates the careless ones.
And that system, as our text breaks down so beautifully, is the pre-shot routine. So our mission for today's deep dive is to understand the mechanics, the psychology, and honestly, the physiology of this routine.
Because mastering this process can realistically transform your scorecard without you ever having to change your actual swing.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Where do we even begin with building a system that can do all of that?
Well, we begin with a really fundamental truth about human performance, and it applies far beyond the fairway.
Okay, what is it?
It does not matter if you are on a golf course, sitting in a high-stakes boardroom, or like working in an emergency room. Under pressure, you do not rise to the occasion.
Ouch. We all love to think we do, though, right?
Oh, sure.
We all want to believe we're the hero in the movie who suddenly finds this hidden gear when the clock is ticking down.
It is a really comforting thought, but it's a myth. Under pressure, you do not rise to the occasion. You fall back to your system.
You fall back to your system.
Right. Whatever your baseline system is, that is the exact mechanism that will take over when your heart rate spikes and the adrenaline hits. And in golf, your pre-shot routine is your system.
So it's the exact sequence you execute before every single stroke, whether you're driving off the tee on the first hole or tapping in a 2-foot putt on the 18th.
Exactly. It acts as the bridge between knowing what to do in theory and actually doing it when the scorecard starts, talking back to you.
Yeah, when the pressure is real. And the text emphasizes that the system doesn't start when you're standing over the ball, gripping the club.
No, not at all.
It starts well behind it, in a space they refer to as the think box.
Right. The think box is a crucial concept here. It is a strictly defined spatial and mental zone located physically behind the ball. This is your decision zone.
And the text makes it clear that this isn't just a vague pause, right? You're not just casually staring down the fairway while chatting with your playing partners.
No, it has to be a deliberate, structured ritual.
Because clarity has to come before execution. If you don't have absolute clarity in the think box, you end up with those, those rushed swings.
The late club changes.
Yes. The half-committed target is all those awful, I wasn't ready strikes.
We've all been there.
Right? Think about how many times you've stepped up to a ball, felt the wind shift slightly, thought to yourself, maybe I need a different iron.
But you swung anyway, because you were already standing there.
Exactly. You just swung anyway.
And those are the exact strokes that just bleed away your score throughout a round. You weren't outplayed by the course. You just, you weren't ready to hit the ball.
The text's approach to the think box, it actually reminds me of a chef's mise en place.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, if you're a chef in a busy, high-end kitchen, you don't start frantically chopping onions while the pan is already smoking hot and the oil is catching fire.
Right. That would be a disaster.
You stand at your prep station, which is your think box, and you chop, you measure, you organize every single ingredient before the cooking or the execution actually begins. You make all your decisions before you turn on the heat.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that mise en place analogy perfectly captures the psychological divide we need to create.
How so?
Well, the think box bridges the gap between the chaotic, variables-heavy environment of the golf course, the wind, the hazards, the lies,
Right.
and the singular physical act of swinging the club. You're purposefully separating the thinking from the doing.
Okay, so once we step into that think box and stand behind the ball,
Yeah.
what is the very first ingredient we have to prep?
Most people assume it's checking the wind or, pulling a club out of the bag.
That's what I would assume, yeah.
But the text says the first task is entirely physical. It is about regulating the body.
Physiology first. Before you make a single strategic decision, you have to execute a specific breathing protocol.
And it is highly specific. You inhale through the nose, deep down into the belly. And then, and this is the key part, you exhale through the mouth for twice as long as the inhale.
And the text is super adamant that the exhale has to stay rooted in the belly. It cannot lift up into the chest.
That nuance about keeping it in the belly is absolutely critical. When we get anxious, our breathing naturally gets shallow and moves up into the chest.
Right, like that panic breathing.
Exactly. By forcing the breath deep, and specifically by making the exhale twice as long as the inhale, you are biologically hacking your own system.
Now, I have to admit, whenever someone gives the advice to just take a deep breath in a sports context, it usually feels a bit, generic.
Sure.
It feels like yoga studio advice rather than hardcore athletic strategy. Like, how does a deep belly breath actually stop a player from slicing a ball into the woods?
It's a completely fair pushback because it does sound soft on the surface, but it is a mechanical necessity.
Okay, walk me through that.
Think about what happens when you feel pressure.
Yeah.
Your nervous system upshifts. The longer exhale sends a biological signal to the parasympathetic nervous system to take over.
And the parasympathetic nervous system is essentially the body's built-in rest and digest mode, right? The counterbalance to the fight or flight panic response.
That is precisely it. When you feel pressure, your fight or flight response floods your body with adrenaline. What does that do to the physical body?
It makes you tense.
It creates tension, exactly. Your jaw gets tight, your shoulders creep up toward your ears. And crucially for a golfer, that tension leaks straight down your arms and into your hands. You start squeezing the grip.
Wow, it makes total sense when you track it geographically like that. The tight jaw leads to the locked shoulders, which freezes the hands. The tension literally physically travels down the chain.
Right. And the moment you squeeze the grip too tight, your forearms lock. When your forearms lock, your shoulders lock. You have just destroyed your tempo, your rhythm, and your timing before you've even taken a practice swing.
So the breathing protocol is a physiological off switch for that tension.
Exactly. The body loosens, the hands stop squeezing, and your natural rhythm can return. You aren't doing it to feel zen. You are doing it to mechanically save your swing path. It is your first win, and you haven't even moved toward the ball yet.
Okay, so once that tension is cleared physically, the mind finally has the space to do its job. Because once the nervous system is downshifted, we move to the next phase in the think box, which is visualization.
Yes, and the source text is very firm that visualization is not just standing there hoping for a good result.
Right, it's not fantasy. The text uses a very specific word. It calls it programming.
Visualization is programming.
Well,
You have to build a clear internal film of the exact shot you want to create.
it's not just seeing the ball flying generally through the air, right?
No, you see exactly where it will land, how it will bounce, where it will roll, and where it will finally come to a rest.
You're giving the body a literal blueprint.
Because the body will always swing toward the image it trusts the most. If your mind is holding a perfectly clean, hyper-specific picture, your body trusts it.
But what if you're focused on a hazard, like staring intensely at the water on the right?
Then your motion will suddenly try to save the shot mid-swing to avoid the water, which is disastrous for your mechanics. If the picture is fuzzy or focused on what you don't want, the body panics.
Okay, so we have our deep breath. We have our internal film. Now we're finally allowed to be analytical, right? We measure the distance, we use the laser, we identify the exact start line, we pick our club.
Yes, the text says you are fully allowed to calculate here, but then there is a hard stop.
The decision phase ends.
And this is where a vast majority of golfers fail. They make a decision, but they don't actually commit to it. They leave the door open for renegotiation as they walk up to the ball.
The source material calls indecision poison, and that phrasing is, it's heavy. What does indecision actually do to a golf swing?
It creates swings that are neither aggressive nor controlled. They are caught in this weird purgatory of being neither fully committed nor fully cautious.
Right. Think about the last time you stood over a ball or even stepped up to a podium to speak and changed your mind at the very last second.
It's awful.
You don't fully commit to the new plan and you've already abandoned the old one. You end up in purgatory.
And those purgatory swings produce the absolute biggest misses. You decelerate, you flinch, you try to steer the ball at the last millisecond instead of just trusting the motion.
To combat that, the text outlines a final reset. They call it a line in the sand. You've made your decision, you step up behind the ball one last time, you repeat the breath, in through the nose, twice as long, out through the mouth.
You replay that perfect internal film, and then you take your grip.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The moment you set that grip, the thinking phase is dead.
Completely dead.
It is like online shopping. Setting your grip is the equivalent of clicking place order. You can spend hours in the think box adding things to your cart, comparing prices, reading reviews, checking the wind and the shipping costs.
Clock checking all the variables.
But the exact second you click place order, you stop shopping. You don't keep browsing. You don't second guess the purchase. The transaction is complete.
Click place order. That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it. Once that grip is set with intention, any further negotiation with yourself is self-sabotage. Your mind is no longer a calculator. It now has one job, and one job only, which is to lock on to the target.
So the order is placed. Remaining in the think box actually becomes dangerous at this point. That brings us to the physical crossing of the line in the sand, stepping out of the prep station and into what the text calls execution mode.
This transition has to be incredibly sharp.
Yeah.
As you step into a dress, you aren't just looking vaguely down the fairway. You have to anchor your alignment.
And the source details a specific technique for this, right? You pick an intermediate point.
Yes. About half a meter to a meter directly in front of the ball, sitting perfectly on your intended start line.
It could be, what, like a blade of grass, a discolored leaf, an old broken tee?
Exactly. This tiny detail transforms the psychology of the shot. What's fascinating here is how a target 200 yards away is theoretical. It's intimidating, and it is very hard to align your body perfectly to something that far away.
That makes total sense.
But an intermediate point 3 feet in front of you is concrete. It grounds you in the immediate physical reality. It makes alignment absolute rather than a guess.
So you look at that spot, you look at the final target in the distance, you let that internal film flash in your mind one last time, and then you swing.
But even here, the text makes a mechanical distinction that shifts the entire perspective of the sport. You do not swing at the ball. You swing through the ball to the target.
At versus through.
This might be the most profound mechanical advice in the entire text. The swing is merely a delivery system. The target is the command. The ball just happens to be in the way of the delivery system.
It's like a train moving down a track, right? The ball's just a leaf sitting on the rails. The train doesn't stop for the leaf.
That's a great visual. When you try to hit at the ball, you are treating the ball as the destination.
And when the ball is the destination, all your energy just stops there.
Exactly. You get distracted by this little white sphere, you try to quote-unquote hit it, and you completely interrupt the fluidity of the delivery system. If the target is the command, the club just passes through the ball naturally on its way to fulfill that command.
Okay, but if the swing is just a delivery system, what happens when the delivery fails? Because the text says you hold your finish, observe the flight, and let the outcome be what it is without flinching into judgment mid-motion.
Which sounds incredibly peaceful.
Right. But let's be real. Sometimes that ball goes exactly where you want it, and sometimes it slices directly into a parking lot. How does the system handle failure?
Which brings us to the final and perhaps most difficult phase of the system, the post-shot routine. How you handle the immediate aftermath of a shot dictates what happens on the next hole and the hole after that.
The text gives us a very clear rubric here. You grade the shot on a scale of 1 to 10. If it's an 8, 9, or 10, you actively store it. It becomes a reference rep. You file it away as evidence that your system works.
But what about a 4? What about a total shank into the bunker on the 16th hole when your heart is pounding and you're furious with yourself?
Yeah, what then?
You have to become a scientist of your own failure. You investigate it, but without drama. No exploding emotionally, no slamming the club, and importantly, no pretending it didn't happen in some sort of toxic positivity way.
So you ask yourself the diagnostic questions, and notice what the questions are not. They are not about your elbow angle or your wrist hinge.
Right. The questions point back to the system. Did I visualize clearly? Did I actually take my time? Did I execute the breathing protocol properly? Or was my chest tight?
Did I commit after deciding, or was I caught in purgatory? Did I swing to the target, or did I get distracted and hit at the ball?
You analyze the system to find the breakdown. But you cannot just stand there analyzing it forever. There is a strict time limit,
Yeah.
the 30-second rule.
You get exactly 30 seconds to analyze the bad shot, ask those diagnostic questions, extract the data, put the lesson in a mental box, and move on.
Because, as the author states, golf punishes emotional rent.
Emotional rent, man, that phrase is heavy. It perfectly captures how a single mistake isn't just a bad score on one hole, it's an ongoing tax on your focus for the rest of the day.
You cannot afford to replay one mistake for the next 3 holes. Paying emotional rent drains your focus, your confidence, and quite literally your physical energy.
Yeah.
Once those 30 seconds are up, the only question that exists in the universe is, how do I get from where I am right now to the target in as few strokes as possible?
It is incredibly difficult not to take a bad shot personally. I mean, we pour so much ego into our hobbies, our sports, our performance. A bad shot feels like an indictment of our character.
Oh, absolutely.
Imagine you're playing with friends, you hype up a shot, and you top it 10 yards. The embarrassment makes you want to crawl into a hole.
That is the deeper truth that separates the talented self-saboteurs from the people who actually improve. Golf, and honestly, you can apply this to almost any pursuit, is not about hitting more great shots. It's about hitting fewer bad ones.
Because great shots feel natural. We hit a great shot and we think, ah, yes, there I am. That is the real me. We treat the brilliance as our normal baseline.
But the bad shots feel like a personal attack. So we obsess over them, we get angry, we tighten up. But if you can adopt this forward-thinking mindset, you realize that the bad shots aren't personal insults, they are the blueprint.
They contain the exact data you need to tighten up your system.
Exactly. But you can only read that blueprint if you look at it with clarity instead of anger.
So what does this all mean? Let's bring this all together. If you want to save 5 to 6 strokes on your scorecard, you don't need a magical swing fix. You don't need to spend your weekends banging buckets of balls at the range trying to invent a new technique.
No, you need to build a fortress against chaos.
You utilize the think box to force clarity. You use the breathing protocol to mechanically shut off tension and downshift your nervous system.
You build an unshakable internal film. You cross that line in the sand with absolute commitment.
You transition firmly into execution mode, using an intermediate target to ground you in reality. You swing through the ball.
And finally, you use the 30-second rule to extract the data from your failures without paying emotional rent.
You turn every single swing into a predictable process, rather than a highly charged emotional event.
And remember the foundational rule, when the pressure rises, you will not rise to the occasion. You will fall back to your system. So make this routine your system.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, there's a final thought I want to leave you with, and it actually pulls right out of the golf course and into everyday life. We talked a lot about that phrase, emotional rent.
It's a powerful concept.
Think about how much emotional rent you might be paying right now in your own life.
Did you have a bad presentation at work this morning, a clumsy conversation with a friend, a minor mistake at home? How many holes are you letting that mistake drag on for?
What if you applied that 30-second rule to your daily life? You make a misstep, you give yourself a strict time limit to ask the diagnostic questions without all the drama. You analyze the failure, you extract the blueprint for how to do it better next time, you put the lesson in a box, and you completely refuse to carry the emotion forward.
Stop paying rent on a space you no longer occupy.
Stop chasing the fix in the loud places and start building your system in the quiet ones. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.